Jake Morrison knew something was wrong the moment the lights flickered. He was 3 decks below the bridge of the horizon's edge, checking a faulty cooling system. When the entire ship shuddered, the metal walls groaned like a dying animal. Red emergency lights flooded the corridor. "All hands, abandon ship. This is not a drill." The captain's voice crackled through the speakers, barely audible over the screaming alarms. Jake dropped his tools and ran. His boots pounded against the metal floor as he raced toward the nearest escape pod bay. Other crew members rushed past him, their faces pale with fear. The ship lurched violently to one side, throwing Jake against the wall. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he kept moving. He reached Pod Bay 7 just as another explosion rocked the vessel. The door was closing. Jake dove through the gap, slamming his hand on the launch button as he tumbled inside. The pod's engines fired immediately, shooting him away from the dying freighter. Through the small window, Jake watched the horizon's edge break apart. Pieces of hull scattered into the darkness of space like burning leaves. He hoped the others made it out. The pod's computer beeped, searching for the nearest safe landing zone. "Vexlar 7, the mechanical voice announced. "Atmospheric entry in 2 minutes." Jake's stomach dropped. He had heard about Vexlar 7. Every spacer had. It was one of those planets marked in red on the star charts. The kind of place where survey teams went missing. The kind of place where nothing friendly lived. The pod shook as it hit the atmosphere. Jake strapped himself in tight, gritting his teeth as the temperature climbed. Fire surrounded the small vessel. The computer kept talking, its calm voice a strange contrast to the violence of re-entry. "Warning. Landing trajectory compromised. Brace for impact." The world went green as they punched through the cloud layer. Jake saw endless jungle stretching in every direction. Tall trees with purple leaves covered the landscape like a thick carpet. The pod's retro rockets fired, but not enough. They hit the canopy hard, branches snapping and crashing as they fell through layer after layer of vegetation. The final impact knocked the air from Jake's lungs. Everything went quiet except for the hiss of cooling metal and the strange sounds of an alien forest. Jake sat in the dark for a long moment, checking for broken bones. His shoulder ached and his head throbbed. But nothing felt seriously damaged. He was alive. That was more than he expected. He popped the hatch and immediately regretted it. The heat hit him like a physical wall, thick and wet. The air smelled wrong, like copper and rotting fruit. Strange calls echoed through the trees, some high-pitched and chittering, others deep and rumbling. Jake grabbed the emergency pack and climbed out. The pod had carved a path through the jungle, leaving broken branches and scorched earth. He was at least a mile from where it first hit the canopy. Finding this crash site again would be nearly impossible. The first priority was shelter. The pod was damaged but intact enough to provide protection. Jake spent the rest of the day securing the area, gathering fallen branches to camouflage the pod, and setting up basic warning systems with the spare wire and sensors from the emergency kit. As the sun set, the jungle changed. The daytime calls faded, replaced by new sounds. Deeper sounds. Hunting sounds. Jake huddled inside the pod, watching the darkness through the cracked view screen. He pulled up what little information the pod's computer had on Vexlar 7. Most of it was marked as unconfirmed or theoretical. The planet had been surveyed 3 times, and all 3 teams reported the same thing before evacuating. This world belonged to its predators. 2 species ruled Vexlar 7. The files called them Thornbacks and Night Stalkers. The images showed creatures that belonged in nightmares. Thornbacks were massive, built like living tanks with 6 legs and bodies covered in sharp spines. They could bite through steel. Night Stalkers were smaller but no less dangerous. Pack hunters with 4 eyes and skin that could blend with their surroundings. Both species were highly territorial. Both had killed researchers who got too close. Jake closed the files. Knowing what might eat him did not make him feel better. He woke to a crash outside the pod. Something big was moving through the jungle, breaking branches without care. Jake peered through the view screen and froze. A thornback stood 20 feet away, but it was not full-grown. This one was young, maybe juvenile. Its armor had not fully hardened, and several of its spines were bent or broken. Blood oozed from cuts along its side. Before Jake could process what he was seeing, more shapes emerged from the jungle. Night Stalkers, 5 of them, their bodies shimmering as they moved between solid and nearly invisible. They had been hunting the young Thornback, driving it toward Jake's crash site. The juvenile Thornback saw the pod and charged toward it, desperate for any cover. The Night Stalkers followed, spreading out in a coordinated pattern. Jake had maybe 10 seconds before the fight reached him. His hand found the emergency flare gun in the supply kit. It was meant for signaling rescue ships, not fighting alien predators. But Jake was not planning to fight. He kicked open the hatch and fired 3 flares straight up between the Thornback and the Night Stalker pack. The flares exploded in brilliant red light, burning hot and bright. The sudden explosion of color and heat shocked both groups. The Night Stalkers scattered, their camouflage flickering wildly. The Thornback skidded to a stop, its head swinging back and forth in confusion. Jake fired 2 more flares at the ground, creating a wall of smoke and sparks. He had no plan beyond creating chaos. Sometimes, chaos was enough. The Night Stalkers vanished into the jungle. The Thornback remained, breathing hard, its blood dripping onto the scorched earth. It looked at Jake with eyes that seemed too intelligent for an animal. Then it collapsed. Jake stood in the doorway of his pod, flare gun still smoking in his hand, staring at the wounded creature. Every survival instinct told him to close the hatch and hide. This thing could kill him with one bite. Its species had destroyed research stations, but it was hurt. It was young, and it had nowhere else to go. Jake looked at his emergency supplies. He had medical gel designed for human injuries, protein rations that probably would not poison an alien metabolism, and enough foolishness to try something incredibly stupid. He stepped out of the pod and walked toward the Thornback. The creature's eyes followed him, but it did not move. Too weak or too confused, Jake could not tell. He knelt beside it, close enough to see the individual scales on its hide, close enough to smell the strange metallic scent of its blood. "Easy now," Jake said softly, knowing the creature could not understand his words but hoping tone mattered. "Let's see what we can do about those cuts." The young Thornback did not trust Jake. That much was clear from the start. Jake had named the creature Brutus, though he was fairly sure it did not care about names. For 3 days, Brutus stayed near the crashed pod but kept his distance. He ate the protein rations Jake tossed to him but growled whenever Jake came too close. The wounds on his side were healing, but his attitude had not improved. Jake tried everything he knew about animals. He moved slowly and spoke quietly. He offered food from his hand. He gave Brutus space and time. Nothing worked. The creature remained aggressive and unpredictable. On the 4th day, Jake lost his patience. He was trying to repair the pod's communication system when Brutus knocked over his water container for the 3rd time. Jake spun around, grabbed a metal panel from the pod wreckage, and slammed it against a rock. The sound rang through the clearing like a bell. "Knock it off!" Jake shouted. Brutus's entire body went still. His head tilted to one side. Then, to Jake's complete surprise, the creature moved closer. Not in a threatening way, but curious. Interested, Jake stared at the Thornback. He looked down at the metal panel in his hands. Slowly, carefully, he banged it against the rock again. Brutus took another step forward. His tail, which usually lashed when he was angry, swayed gently back and forth. "Well," Jake said quietly, "that is interesting." He spent the rest of the day experimenting. Every time he made a loud noise, Brutus became more relaxed. Quiet approaches made the creature tense and aggressive. Loud, chaotic actions calmed him down. It went against everything Jake thought he knew about working with animals. But Vexlar 7 was not Earth, and Brutus was not an Earth animal. Jake started making noise, a regular part of their routine. He banged metal while preparing food. He set off small, controlled sparks from damaged electrical components. He even rigged up a simple noisemaker from spare parts that created random clanging sounds. Brutus began staying closer to the pod. Within a week, he was eating from Jake's hand, though only when Jake was also creating some kind of commotion. The Night Stalkers had not left. Jake caught glimpses of them in the jungle, their shimmering forms barely visible against the purple foliage. They were watching, learning. Jake noticed they appeared most often when he was making noise or creating small explosions of light and sound. One evening, Jake was testing a new theory. He had gathered dry vegetation and was burning it in controlled patches, while Brutus watched with clear enjoyment. The flames crackled and popped, sending sparks into the air. Brutus rumbled. A sound Jake had learned meant contentment. Movement at the edge of the clearing caught Jake's eye. A Night Stalker stood there, fully visible instead of camouflaged. It was the same one he had seen several times before, distinguished by a scar across its shoulder. Jake had started thinking of this one as Shadow. Shadow watched the fire with clear interest. Her 4 eyes reflected the dancing flames. She did not approach, but she did not leave either. Jake made a decision that was probably stupid. He tossed a protein bar toward Shadow, not close enough to threaten but close enough to be an offer. Shadow looked at the food, then at Jake, then at Brutus, who was still rumbling happily by the fire. She grabbed the protein bar and melted back into the jungle, but Jake noticed something important. The rest of her pack had shown themselves at the tree line, watching. This was not a hunt. This was curiosity. Over the following days, Jake developed a routine. Every evening, he created what he started calling chaos sessions. He would set up elaborate scenarios using salvaged equipment, sparking wires here, crashing metal there, small controlled fires in safe areas. Brutus loved it, becoming more comfortable and even playful during these events, and Shadow's pack kept watching. Jake began leaving food at the clearing's edge during chaos sessions. The Night Stalkers took it, always careful, always observing. They were learning that the human's noise meant opportunity, meant safety from larger predators that avoided the commotion, meant easy food. Jake was learning too. He noticed that both species seemed to thrive on unpredictability. The jungle of Vexlar 7 was full of volcanic vents that randomly exploded with steam. Electrical storms rolled through every few days, lighting up the sky. The ground itself sometimes shook with seismic activity. These creatures had evolved in chaos. They did not fear it. They were attracted to it. One morning, Jake was woken by Brutus making alarmed sounds. He grabbed his flare gun and stumbled out of the pod to find a fully grown thornback at the edge of the clearing. This one was massive, easily twice Brutus's size, its armor thick and scarred from years of fighting. Brutus positioned himself between Jake and the larger thornback, but he was clearly outmatched. The adult advanced slowly, each step shaking the ground. It was not hunting. It was establishing dominance, driving away a rival, and the strange creature that rival protected. Jake's mind raced. He could retreat into the pod, but that would leave Brutus to face the adult alone. The young thornback had stayed with him, protected him from smaller threats. Jake could not abandon him now. He ran to his supply pile and grabbed everything that could make noise or light. Flares, electrical components, metal sheets, even the fuel cells from the pod's damaged engine. "Brutus, move!" Jake shouted, and the young thornback had learned enough to respond to Jake's tone. He backed toward the pod. Jake started throwing everything he had. Flares exploded in the adult thornback's face. He smashed metal sheets together. He overloaded a power cell, making it spark and scream. Then, in a moment of either brilliance or insanity, he cracked open a fuel cell and tossed it toward the approaching predator. The fuel ignited in a massive flash of light and heat, not enough to truly hurt the armored creature, but enough to shock it, to create complete sensory chaos. The adult thornback stopped, shaking its head, clearly confused by the assault of light and sound. Then Shadow's pack attacked. The Night Stalkers came from 3 directions at once, their camouflage dropping as they struck. They were not trying to kill the larger thornback, but to drive it away from their territory, from their source of easy food and interesting chaos. The adult thornback, faced with a pack of Night Stalkers and a crazy human still throwing sparking components, decided this clearing was not worth the trouble. It turned and crashed back into the jungle. Jake stood breathing hard, his hands shaking from adrenaline. Brutus moved to his side, that rumbling sound of contentment vibrating through the air. Shadow and her pack remained at the clearing's edge, watching Jake with what he could only describe as respect. "Well," Jake said, to no one in particular, "I guess we are all in this together now." From that day forward, everything changed. Shadow's pack started appearing during chaos sessions, not as threats, but as participants. They learned that Jake's activities often flushed out prey animals that fled the noise. They discovered that staying near the humans' territory meant protection from larger predators who avoided the constant commotion. Jake refined his approach. He set up tripwires that released bursts of sound. He created light shows with salvaged electrical equipment. He even built a primitive catapult that could fling rocks into the jungle, creating crashes and chaos that both Brutus and the Night Stalkers seemed to enjoy. He was not training them in any traditional sense. He was creating an environment they wanted to be part of. An environment that felt natural to creatures born in chaos. Brutus grew stronger and larger. The wounds from his first encounter healed completely. He began hunting in the jungle but always returned to the clearing. Especially when Jake started up his chaos generators. The rescue ship arrived on a Tuesday morning, though Jake had long since stopped tracking Earth days. He was in the middle of what he called a hunting assist, setting off controlled explosions in a line through the jungle to drive a herd of six-legged herbivores toward where Shadow's pack waited. Brutus was practicing his hunting skills on the other side, learning to use the chaos Jake created to his advantage. The sound of atmospheric engines cut through the morning air. Jake looked up to see a human shuttle descending toward his clearing. His first thought was relief. His second thought was concern about how he would explain the current situation. The shuttle landed in the expanded clearing Jake had made over the past months. Two people climbed out, weapons ready, clearly expecting to find a desperate survivor barely holding on. Instead, they found Jake standing calmly, while a thornback, the size of a small transport, lounged nearby, and a pack of Night Stalkers observed from the tree line. The pilot, a woman named Christine Wade, raised her rifle. "Step away from the creature. Slowly. Please do not shoot," Jake said, putting up his hands. "This is Brutus. He is friendly." "Thornbacks are not friendly," the other crew member, Navigator Ben Torres, said. His hand was on his sidearm. "They are apex predators. They are also misunderstood," Jake replied. "Just stay calm. No sudden movements." As if to prove Jake wrong, Brutus stood up and approached the newcomers. Christine's finger tightened on the trigger. Ben took a step back toward the shuttle. Jake did the only thing he could think of. He grabbed a metal sheet and slammed it against a rock. The loud clang echoed across the clearing. Brutus immediately relaxed, his aggressive posture shifting to curious interest. He moved past the frozen rescue team and nuzzled against Jake's side, rumbling contentedly. Christine and Ben stared in complete confusion. "What just happened?" Christine asked. "Controlled chaos," Jake said. "It is how we communicate. Come on, I will explain everything. But first, I need to finish this hunting assist, or Shadow's pack will not eat today." "Shadow's pack?" Ben repeated weakly. Jake pointed to the tree line where the Night Stalkers waited. "The invisible ones watching us right now. They work with me too." Christine lowered her rifle slowly. "Jake Morrison? That is me. Your file says you are a maintenance technician." "I am, with no xenobiology training." "Correct. How are you alive right now?" Jake grinned. "Controlled chaos." "Now, do you want to watch something amazing, or do you want to leave immediately?" "Because if we leave now, I need to make arrangements for my friends here." Christine and Ben exchanged glances. Finally, Christine said, "Show us." Jake spent the next hour demonstrating his methods. He set up a series of noisemakers and light generators in a pattern through the jungle. Then he activated them in sequence, creating a wave of chaos that pushed the herbivore herd exactly where he wanted them. Shadow's pack moved in perfect coordination, taking down two of the slower animals with practiced efficiency. Brutus joined the hunt, using his size and strength to cut off escape routes. The entire operation was smooth and coordinated. When it was over, Jake distributed protein rations as rewards. Brutus took his share and settled down for a nap. Shadow approached closer than ever before, taking food directly from Jake's hand while her pack watched. Christine and Ben sat on a fallen log, watching everything with expressions of pure disbelief. "This is impossible," Ben said. "Every scientific survey of this planet says these species cannot be approached." "They were looking at it wrong," Jake explained. "They tried to be quiet and calm. These creatures evolved in a chaotic environment. Volcanic vents, electrical storms, earthquakes. They are attracted to chaos, not repelled by it." "So you just made a lot of noise?" Christine asked. "Not random noise. Controlled chaos. Patterns they can learn. Predictable unpredictability. If that makes sense." "It does not," Ben said flatly. Jake laughed. "I know. But it works." They spent the next 3 days at Jake's camp, while Christine and Ben documented everything. Jake showed them how Brutus responded to different types of stimulation, how Shadow's pack had learned to anticipate his chaos sessions, how both species had actually started creating their own small chaos events, as if playing or practicing. "This changes everything we know about Vexlar 7, Christine said on the third evening. "We need to report this." "I know," Jake replied. "But I want to stay. At least for a while longer." "Why?" Ben asked. "You are sitting on a discovery that will make you famous. The council will pay a fortune for this information." Jake looked at Brutus, sleeping peacefully near the fire. At Shadow, watching from her usual spot at the clearing's edge. "Because no one else understands them like I do. If I leave now, some research team will show up with their quiet observation methods and get themselves killed. These creatures need someone who speaks their language." Christine nodded slowly. "Then we stay too. 1 week. We document everything properly. Then we all go back, and you can present your findings yourself." "Deal," Jake said. The week turned into a masterclass in chaos-based xenobiology. Christine and Ben were smart and adapted quickly. Jake taught them to read the subtle signs that indicated what kind of chaos each species preferred. Brutus liked loud, physical noise. Shadow's pack preferred lights and unexpected movements. Ben, with his scientific background, started forming theories. "I think they use chaos as a bonding mechanism," he said one evening. "In an environment this unpredictable, working together during chaotic events would be a survival advantage. You have tapped into their social bonding instincts." "Maybe," Jake said. "Or maybe they just think it is fun." "Fun?" Christine raised an eyebrow. "Look at them." Jake gestured to Brutus, who was chasing sparks from a malfunctioning generator like a puppy chasing butterflies. "Does that look like survival instinct to you?" Christine had to admit it did not. On the 5th day, Jake introduced them to what he called the Friendship Festival. He had been planning this event for weeks, gathering materials and building devices specifically for one massive chaos celebration. At sunset, he activated everything at once. Fireworks made from flares shot into the sky. Noisemakers created a symphony of clangs and crashes. Light generators painted the clearing in shifting colors. Electrical devices sparked and hummed. Small controlled fires burned in safe patterns. Brutus went wild with joy, running circles around the clearing, roaring with what could only be described as laughter. Shadow's pack emerged fully from the jungle, all pretense of hunting behavior gone. They played, chasing lights and each other through the organized chaos. Even other creatures from the jungle approached, drawn by the spectacle. Smaller predators, herbivores, even flying creatures that Jake had never seen before. For one perfect hour, the clearing became a place of pure, joyful chaos. Christine recorded everything, tears streaming down her face. "This is beautiful," she whispered. Ben was too stunned to speak. When the festival ended and the creatures dispersed, Jake found both of his visitors sitting in silence. "You did not just tame them," Christine finally said. "You became part of their world. You learned their culture." "I guess so," Jake replied. "I just did what felt right." The Galactic Council chamber was nothing like Jake expected. He had imagined something grand and impressive. Instead, it was a simple circular room with representatives from a dozen species sitting in tiered seats. All of them were staring at him. Jake stood in the center with Christine and Ben flanking him. On the massive screen behind them, footage of Brutus and Shadow's pack played on loop. The council members watched with expressions ranging from fascination to outright horror. Ambassador Karen Ellis, the human representative, spoke first. Members of the council, Jake Morrison has achieved what 3 previous expeditions could not. He has successfully made contact with Vexlar 7's apex predators without a single casualty. A Lorian delegate, her blue skin shimmering with agitation, rose from her seat. This is not contact. This is exploitation. These creatures should be left alone, not turned into performing animals. They are not performing, Jake said quietly. They are living, thriving, actually. A Zenthari commander, his military uniform covered in medals, leaned forward. How did you accomplish this? Our best trainers tried to establish dominance with thornbacks. All of them died. That is the problem, Jake replied. You tried to dominate. I tried to understand. Explain, the commander demanded. Jake took a breath. Vexlar 7 is a chaotic planet. Volcanic activity, electrical storms, seismic events. The creatures there did not evolve to fear chaos. They evolved to thrive in it. So I gave them what they were comfortable with, chaos. The Lorian delegate said with clear disapproval. You created chaos. Autonally, controlled chaos, Christine interjected. Patterns that the creatures could learn and anticipate. It became a form of communication. Ben activated another video. This one showed Jake's friendship festival, with creatures from across the jungle gathering in apparent celebration. Several council members gasped. This footage has been verified as authentic, Ben said. Multiple species, including known predator-prey relationships, coexisting peacefully during a structured chaos event. The Zenthari commander stood. We need this technology. The military applications alone would revolutionize how we handle hostile planets. Absolutely not, the Lorian delegate countered. This discovery should be classified, and Vexlar 7 should be declared off-limits. We cannot allow this knowledge to be weaponized. Karen Ellis raised her hand. Perhaps we should hear Jake's own recommendations. All eyes turned to Jake. He had prepared for this moment during the 3-week journey to the council station, but his mouth still went dry. I think both of you are wrong, he said. This is not about technology or weapons. It is not about leaving the planet isolated either. This is about changing how we approach first contact with species we do not understand. A human maintenance worker is going to lecture the council on xenobiology? A reptilian delegate hissed. Yes, Jake said firmly. Because I am the one who succeeded where your trained scientists failed. And I succeeded because I did not assume I knew better than the creatures themselves. The room erupted in arguments. Some delegates supported Jake. Others called for his methods to be banned. The Zenthari commander insisted on immediate access to Vexlar 7 for military assessment. Karen Ellis called for order. Perhaps a demonstration would help. The commander smiled. Agreed. Let my people attempt Morrison's methods under controlled conditions. If they work, we continue research. If they fail, we seal the planet. Jake wanted to refuse, but he saw the political reality. The council would make a decision with or without his cooperation. At least this way, he could monitor what happened. 2 weeks later, Jake found himself back on Vexlar 7, with a team of Zenthari military xenobiologists. Commander Vex himself led the group, confident and dismissive of Jake's warnings. Your methods work with juveniles, Vex said as they set up camp near Jake's original clearing. We will test them on full adults, prove they can be replicated by trained professionals. It is not about training, Jake tried to explain. It is about attitude, about respect. We respect strength, Vex replied. And we will demonstrate it. Brutus had grown in the months Jake was gone. He was nearly full size now, his armor thick and scarred from establishing his territory. When he saw Jake, He rumbled with clear pleasure and approached for greeting. The Zenthari soldiers raised their weapons immediately. "Stand down," Jake said firmly. "He is friendly." Vex watched with calculating eyes. "Show us your chaos method." Jake set up a simple demonstration. He activated a few noisemakers and light generators. Brutus responded predictably, relaxing and showing signs of contentment. Shadow's pack emerged from the jungle to watch, as they always did. "Simple," Vex said. "We will replicate this with our own equipment. Better equipment. Military grade." Jake felt a cold weight in his stomach. That is not how this works. It is not about the quality of the equipment. It is about the intention behind it. "Nonsense," Vex said. "Chaos is chaos. We will prove that your success was luck, not skill." The next day, the Zenthari team set up their demonstration. They had brought sophisticated equipment, sound generators calibrated to specific frequencies, light shows programmed with military precision, controlled explosive charges designed for maximum impact. They activated everything according to a strict plan. The sound hit specific decibel levels at precise intervals. The lights followed a calculated pattern. The explosions occurred in exact sequence. It was chaos, but it was sterile. Mechanical. Without any sense of play or joy. Brutus approached cautiously, then retreated. Shadow's pack remained in the jungle, refusing to show themselves. Other creatures that had started gathering during Jake's sessions stayed away. Vex frowned. The frequency must be wrong. Adjust the generators. They tried for 3 hours. Different sounds, different light patterns, different timing. Nothing worked. Brutus became increasingly agitated. Shadow's pack disappeared entirely. "This proves nothing," Vex said. "The creatures are simply not hungry today." Jake shook his head. "They know the difference. You are treating this like a science experiment. I treated it like a conversation." "Ridiculous," Vex snapped. "Activate sequence 7. Maximum intensity." "Wait," Jake started, but it was too late. The Zenthari equipment roared to life at full power. The sound was deafening. The lights were blinding. Explosions rocked the clearing in rapid succession. Brutus panicked. His survival instincts kicked in, and he charged. Not at the humans, but at the equipment that was assaulting his senses. He smashed through the sound generators, crushing them under his massive feet. The Zenthari soldiers opened fire. "No!" Jake shouted, running between Brutus and the soldiers. "Stop shooting!" Christine and Ben joined him, forming a human barrier. The bullets stopped, but the damage was done. Brutus was bleeding from several wounds, none serious but all painful. He roared in anger and fear. Jake grabbed a metal panel, the same one he had used on that first day, and slammed it against a rock. The familiar sound cut through the chaos. Brutus stopped. His eyes found Jake. Jake hit the panel again, and again. A rhythm, a pattern, a conversation. Slowly, Brutus calmed. He approached Jake, ignoring the soldiers, and pressed his massive head against Jake's chest. Jake could feel the creature trembling. From the jungle, Shadow emerged. Her pack followed, surrounding the clearing in a protective circle. They were not attacking, but the message was clear. The Zenthari team had crossed a line. "Stand down," Karen Ellis's voice came over the communication channel. She had been watching via satellite feed. "Commander Vex, your demonstration is concluded. Return to the shuttle immediately." Vex looked like he wanted to argue, but even he could see the situation had become dangerous. His team packed their equipment and retreated. Jake stayed with Brutus, treating his wounds and speaking softly. Shadow approached and, for the first time, allowed Jake to touch her. It was a gesture of solidarity, of understanding that the human had protected them. That evening, as the Zenthari shuttle left orbit, Jake sat with Christine and Ben around the message from the Galactic Council, arrived 6 days after the failed Zenthari demonstration. Jake sat in his rebuilt camp, reading it on a portable screen while Brutus dozed nearby and Shadow's pack played in the clearing. "They are giving me a choice," Jake said to Christine and Ben. Leave Vexlar 7 permanently and allow scientific teams to continue research. Or stay and accept full responsibility for establishing formal contact protocols. That is not really a choice, Ben observed. If you leave, someone will get killed trying to replicate your methods. I know. Jake looked at the creatures around him. Over the past months, they had become more than research subjects. They were companions. Family. In a strange way. So you stay, Christine said. It was not a question. I stay. But on my terms. Jake started typing a response to the council. If they want contact protocols, I will give them protocols. But this planet remains protected. No military operations, no exploitation, just research and understanding. The council accepted his terms, probably because they had no better option. Jake Morrison became the official human liaison to Vexlar 7, the first person to hold such a position for a planet classified as hostile. The first research team arrived 3 months later. Jake had requested them specifically. Young scientists with open minds and no preconceived notions about how things should work. Their leader was a woman named Lisa Grant, a xenobiologist who had studied Jake's reports with genuine fascination. She stepped off the shuttle with 2 assistants, looking around the clearing with wide eyes. It is more beautiful than I imagined, she said. Jake liked her immediately. He spent the first week teaching Lisa's team the basics. Not the technical details, but the philosophy behind his methods. How to read the creature's moods, how to create chaos that felt playful rather than threatening, how to understand that these animals were intelligent in ways human science had not expected. Lisa proved to be a quick learner. By the second week, she was creating her own chaos sessions. They were simpler than Jake's elaborate festivals, but effective. Brutus accepted her presence. Shadow's pack allowed her to observe them. I think I understand now, Lisa said one evening. Traditional xenobiology assumes that intelligence looks like our intelligence. Calm. Rational. Controlled. But these creatures are intelligent in a completely different way. Exactly, Jake said. They think through action and reaction. Through chaos and pattern. It is not better or worse than our way. Just different. More researchers arrived over the following months. Jake vetted each one carefully. Some, he sent away immediately when they showed the wrong attitude. Others stayed and contributed to what was becoming a true understanding of Vexlar 7's ecosystem. Ben took charge of documenting everything. His detailed reports went to universities across human space, revolutionizing how xenobiology was taught. Christine coordinated with the council, ensuring that Vexlar 7 remained protected while sharing knowledge that could help understand other seemingly hostile worlds. Jake focused on what he did best, working with the creatures. Brutus reached full maturity and became the dominant thornback in the region. But instead of driving Jake away, as adult thornbacks normally would, he brought other young thornbacks to the camp. Jake found himself teaching these juveniles the same way he had taught Brutus, creating chaos sessions that helped them feel comfortable around humans. Shadow's pack had pups. She brought them to the clearing's edge when they were old enough, letting them watch from safety. Jake understood the trust this represented. Predators did not expose their young unless they felt completely secure. One day, a year after the first research team arrived, Jake sat on a rock overlooking an expanded clearing. What had started as a crash site was now a small research station. Prefabricated buildings housed equipment and living quarters. But the center remained wild, a space where creatures and humans met on equal terms. Lisa approached and sat beside him. I have news from the council. Good news or bad news? Both. The good news is that they are officially recognizing your methods as a new field of study. They are calling it chaos ecology. Jake smiled. And the bad news? They want you to visit other planets. Test your methods on different species. You have become somewhat famous. Jake looked at Brutus, now leading a group of young thornbacks in a mock hunt, at Shadow, teaching her pups to respond to the noisemakers Jake had built. At the human researchers working alongside both species in harmony. I cannot leave, he said. Not permanently. This is my home. I told them you would say that. So they made a different offer. You stay here most of the time, but occasionally consult on difficult first contact situations, via remote communication mostly, but sometimes in person for critical cases. I can work with that, Jake agreed. Over the next 2 years, Jake's little research station became a hub for xenobiological study. Scientists from across the galaxy came to learn his methods. Most failed at first, unable to break free from traditional thinking, but the ones who succeeded, who truly understood that chaos could be communication, went on to make breakthroughs on other worlds. A team studying the crystalline creatures of Sigma-9 used Jake's principles to make first contact. Another group working with the hive minds of Kepler 442b found that controlled chaos helped them understand the aliens' collective consciousness. Jake consulted on all of these projects, but he always returned to Vexlar 7. This planet, these creatures, they were his responsibility, his calling. One evening, 3 years after the crash, Jake hosted what had become a monthly tradition, the Grand Chaos Festival. It had grown from his original simple celebration into an elaborate event. Researchers from the station participated. Creatures from across the jungle gathered. Brutus, now a massive adult, played like a juvenile. Shadow's pack, which had grown to include 3 generations, coordinated displays that showed clear intelligence and planning. Other species that had learned to trust the chaos joined in. As Jake watched fireworks he had made from salvaged materials light up the sky, he thought about his journey. He had been a simple maintenance technician, a man who fixed broken equipment and never expected to be anything more. A catastrophic crash had stranded him on a death world. He should have died in the first week. Instead, he had learned to speak a language no human had understood before. He had made friends with creatures that had killed trained scientists. He had started a scientific revolution by doing the one thing everyone said was impossible. He had embraced chaos instead of fighting it. Lisa joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the station. Thinking deep thoughts? Just reflecting on how strange life is, Jake said, accepting the cup. 3 years ago, I was worried about making rent. Now, I am the leading expert on chaos-based xenobiology. You earned it. What you have built here, it is incredible. Jake shook his head. I did not build anything. I just learned to listen. The creatures taught me everything. As if to prove his point, Brutus approached and gently headbutted Jake's shoulder. It was his way of asking for attention. Jake scratched behind the plates of the Thornback's armor, finding the spots that Brutus liked. Shadow emerged from the crowd with her oldest pup, now nearly full-grown. She made a series of chirping sounds that Jake had learned meant greeting. He chirped back. Not perfectly, but close enough. You know, Lisa said, there are people who think you have some kind of special gift. That you can connect with aliens in ways normal humans cannot. Jake laughed. There is no gift. I just do not assume I know better than the creatures I am trying to understand. Most people, they come to a new world and try to force it to fit their expectations. I just adapted. That is your gift, Lisa said quietly. Adaptability. Humility. The willingness to learn from anyone, even creatures everyone else considered monsters. More researchers joined the festival. Humans and aliens working together, learning from the creatures of Vexlar 7. Jake had become something he never expected. A teacher. A bridge between species. A translator of chaos, but more than that, he had found his place in the universe. The fire burned low as the festival wound down. Creatures dispersed back into the jungle, satisfied and happy. The researchers returned to the station, chattering excitedly about their observations. Jake stayed in the clearing with Brutus and Shadow. This was his favorite time, when the chaos settled and peace returned. When it was just him and his friends under alien stars. Tomorrow we have visitors from the council, Jake said to the creatures, knowing they did not understand his words but hoping his tone conveyed meaning. Some admirals who want to see if your species can be trained for military purposes. I am going to show them the same thing I showed Commander Vex. That you cannot be controlled. Only understood. Brutus rumbled, that deep sound of contentment that Jake had learned to love. Shadow pressed her head against his hand, her way of showing trust. Jake smiled. 3 years ago, he crashed on this planet expecting to die. Instead, he found life. Real, chaotic, beautiful life. He was a maintenance technician who became a pioneer, a nobody who became somebody. A human who proved that sometimes the best way to make friends was not through control or dominance, but through joy, chaos, and the willingness to dance in the unpredictable rhythms of existence. As he sat between his two unlikely companions, Jake Morrison felt something he had not experienced in years of working on cargo freighters and living paycheck to paycheck. He felt complete. The universe was vast and strange and full of wonders, and Jake had learned the secret to navigating it. Do not fight the chaos. Embrace it. Learn its patterns. Dance with it. And maybe, just maybe, you will find that the monsters everyone fears are just misunderstood friends, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to speak their language. Jake had been both brave and foolish. And it had made all the difference. A small fire. The council will make their decision soon, Christine said. I know, Jake replied. And whatever they decide, I am staying here. They might not allow that, Ben pointed out. Jake looked at Brutus, sleeping peacefully now despite his injuries. At Shadow's pack, keeping watch from the tree line. They can try to stop me. But I will not abandon my friends, Christine smiled. Then I guess we are staying too. Someone needs to document the first human to choose a death world over civilization. I am choosing life. Jake corrected. Real life. Not the sterile, controlled existence we have in human space. Here, everything is alive. Everything is real. The fire crackled between them. In the jungle, the sounds of Vexlar 7's night cycle began. It was dangerous and chaotic and completely unpredictable. It was home. The council needs to see this, Ben said firmly. Not just the techniques, but the philosophy behind it. You have proven that understanding is more important than control. Jake agreed to return to human space, but on one condition. He would come back to Vexlar 7. This was his home now. These creatures were his responsibility. As they packed for departure the next day, Shadow approached Jake directly for the first time. She pressed her head against his hand, a gesture of trust that made Jake's throat tight with emotion. Brutus, now nearly full-grown, rumbled his goodbye. Or maybe his see you later. Jake had learned to tell the difference. The shuttle lifted off with Jake looking back at the clearing. He had crashed on this planet expecting to die. Instead, he had found purpose. He had discovered that sometimes the best way to connect with others was not through calm and control, but through shared joy in the chaos of existence. And he had learned the most important lesson of all. The universe was bigger and stranger than any human could imagine. And the only way to truly understand it was to embrace the unexpected. As the planet shrank beneath them, Jake was already planning his return. He had so much more to learn, so much more chaos to create. Shadow's pack brought their young to the clearing's edge, letting them watch from a safe distance. Jake took this as a sign of trust. Predators did not expose their young unless they felt secure. 3 months after the crash, Jake had achieved something impossible. He had a juvenile thornback that responded to his voice. He had a Night Stalker pack that coordinated with him. And he had done it all through controlled chaos. He often wondered what the scientists who studied Vexlar 7 would think. They had tried quiet observation and careful approach. They had tried to understand these creatures through the lens of Earth animals. Jake had succeeded by accepting that these were not Earth animals. They did not want calm. They wanted excitement. They did not want predictability. They wanted chaos. And Jake had learned to speak their language. He opened the medical kit, his hands shaking slightly. The thornback watched him with those two smart eyes. Somewhere in the dark jungle, the Night Stalkers were watching too. Jake could feel their gaze like pressure on the back of his neck. He was stranded on a death world, treating a predator that could bite him in half, while being stalked by a pack of invisible hunters. Jake had experienced better days in his life. But as he carefully cleaned the thornback's wounds, seeing how it relaxed slightly under his touch. He felt something unexpected. Purpose. He was going to survive this world. And he was going to do it his way.